She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
Okay, when a guy has a website and a moniker and everything about social media, it says food lies, I'm all in. So Brian, tell me, where did we as a country start shouting these food lies? When did things go awry with us?
Wow. Well, it really started in the 50s, actually. It started in the 50s with President Eisenhower and having a heart attack. And a lot of people may know this story about the Ansel Keys stuff. I don't know, a lot of people in my health space do know this, but I can briefly go over it and we'll cover it all in the film. But yeah, Ansel Keys, there was competing ideas back then for what caused heart disease, right? We didn't have it all figured out. We didn't have all the science back then, and people were making guesses. We're like, oh, I don't know, fat. Maybe fat's bad. Maybe fat just goes in your arteries and it clogs them. Like if you put bacon grease in a sink. And, it was a reasonable idea if you didn't know what you're talking about, or you didn't have the science, or you didn't know how the human body worked. So it turned out to be completely untrue. But there was a competing guy, actually, John Yedkin. So he's interesting because he was from London, I believe. And he thought, hey, everywhere British colonies go, they bring in like vegetable oils and sugar and refined grains and flour, and they all get sick. So maybe it's these three refined ingredients. And so they had this war, and Ansel Keys was saying, oh, it's fat. It's so obvious it's fat. Fat and meat were starting to be demonized since earlier, really as early as 1890, 1880. So it's weird to me because animal food has been regarded as the pillar of health for all of history. And then all of a sudden, it starts creeping in. There's this kind of more plant-based movement, which is a whole nother side story. But it kind of came to a head in the 1950s when they're trying to figure it out. And they had these assumptions that meat was bad because of, religious ideas, some of them, right? So really, there was a 7-country study. It was a 6-country study and a 7-country study. And the short story is that Ansel Keys took out, he looked at 22 countries, but he chose the 7 countries that fit his little idea that saturated fat was bad. And so he tried to show that, there's a line, and as heart disease goes up, so does saturated fat consumption. But when you add in all the other 22 countries, it doesn't work. So that's where it started. And so between 1950 and up until 1980, when there was a formal dietary guidelines and the food pyramid, that's the time when all the food lies came into effect.
How did you get involved in this type of thinking? Like what was it about it that was just a magnet that pulled you in?
Well, the sad part is I lost both my parents at 30 years old. They, which is pretty young for someone to lose both their parents to these modern chronic diseases that we think are normal. People just think that, it's expected for people to get Alzheimer's and cancer and all these other things. So the stuff, the stuff people can easily trace to diet is like type 2 diabetes, obesity, all these other things. But what I didn't know is once I started looking into it more is that Alzheimer's and cancer was part of this, right? This is part of this diet and lifestyle related stuff that's completely preventable that we can do something about. And that's what woke me up. It's like, I don't have to have this happen to me. It's not, I just have these genetics and, my family, they both died early. So I'm screwed. That's not how it works, right? People for all of history did not have these things. These are new modern diseases. I love the idea called the mismatch diseases. And these are the mismatch between our genes and what they expect and our modern environment. And that's what's causing all of the diseases.
Wow. So that means that takes us into epigenetics, because I think it was around the 80s, medical schools were still pushing big that DNA had everything to do with it. Can't outrun your DNA. And then we started realizing it was the way we express those genes. Mm-hmm. And it's what we do with them. And so people don't realize, and I know you do, Brian, but the key is in our hands. The government doesn't have the key. Pharma does not have the key. And we hold the key. And you know what? It's free. That's what shocks me about when I'm learning all the time, and I'm just a student, always learning about something. I've been an intermittent faster now. I will start my 5th year of intermittent fasting, having about a 4-hour window every day of an eating window. I start that in a couple months. It'll be year 5 starts in a couple months. And just seeing that any little condition I had dissipates just by reducing the amount of hours that I release insulin. So then I realized, well, that insulin that is being pushed and the metformin that's being sold by your doctor gets them the trip to Cabo and gets you a trip to the funeral home. I hate to oversimplify it that way, but that's been my realization about what these food lies are. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Jason Fung, the nephrologist?
Absolutely.
So,
up in Toronto, I almost got an interview with him, but it just didn't quite work out when I was up there. Yeah.
Man, he's the father to me of the science of really lowering insulin and intermittent fasting. And he is the one who says that our obesity rates, we started seeing them where there was no obesity in the 50s. And it was around 50s, 60s. He said 70s, we started getting TV dinners and really the influx of these processed foods. And now, as you know, by what's on the inside of the grocery store, they're frankenfoods. Our body doesn't even recognize them. And so that's, again, we hold the key. And no one wants us to know that. Don't you agree with that?
I absolutely do. I've woken up to a lot of things, especially in the last year and a half, about how big industry works and the world works and how governments work and big pharma works. So I did wake up to a lot of the food stuff, right? So I've been on this journey for 8 years and I understood, yes, it's not healthcare, it's sick care.
Totally.
Everyone listening probably knows that. It's just a big business racket, basically. And so I knew that stuff. And then I knew the food stuff was backwards, food pyramid upside down, all that stuff. But, just recently, I just understood more about how the world works. And I do think there's a lot of kind of just things going on that aren't really at the best interest of the people. And that there's a lot of free ways to heal yourself or stay healthy that no one's talking about. And it's becoming pretty obvious and just weird at this point where, in the beginning I was just like, okay, yeah, they're just trying to sell their cereals and they're big, everyone's in the pocket of each other and the advertisers are paying for the studies and paying for the airtime. And then the media just keeps pushing the same old stuff because big food is paying them. But then the last year and a half, when zero people out there, the government officials in charge of health, are talking about the free things you could be doing to be healthy, that it could change your immune health, it can change your life. They're not saying it. And then I'm like, okay,
it baffles me. That baffles me.
It's insane. It's absurd. It's like, I'm like, what? You can't be real. Like talking to a normal person, like, don't you see what's going on? This is insane.
Well, it's funny. The other day I was, on my social media and I looked over at my husband. I said, here's what someone said. They said we ought to mandate vitamin D, exercise, I went through my things and my husband slowly looked. He goes, well, I don't believe in any government mandates. I go, well, yeah, you know what I mean. My point was, that's right. And he tempered it with, well, let's go with no government mandates on what we do. And I said, you're right. I said, but why isn't, and this is not a political conversation, why isn't any leader of the state health department, whatever each state has one. Mm-hmm. We obviously have federal people in federal offices that do this. Why aren't they saying, hey, as an aside, cut the crap out of your food, quit eating sugar, eat more meat, all these things. And I thought, oh, because that's not who's getting rich. Oh, who's getting rich are those other people.
There's no benefit. There's no benefit to tell people to go outside and exercise and get sun, and vitamin D is free. You don't have to get it from a pill even. All these things are free. Yeah. And it all makes sense when you understand that there's bigger agendas than keeping people healthy. I think it's funny when people talk about conspiracy theories. Because I'm like, well, you know what? The biggest conspiracy theory is the government cares about your health. That's the biggest conspiracy ever.
Can you repeat that? Say it louder for the people in the back. The government does not care about your health. I mean, are people disappointed by that? Did they really think somebody taught them that? Remember, Ronald Reagan one of his famous things was the most, frightening words in the English vocabulary are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." He said, they're not.
Mhm.
So if people can start thinking about things that way, that you do the research and you do the work to find out what's best for you. And that may be whatever you do,
Mhm.
whatever you decide. Okay, let's talk about your film. And the film is Food Lies, right?
Yeah.
And that's your Instagram name. And I'm putting all this in the show notes. Anything about you, Brian,
Mhm.
because people need to follow you. You have life-changing information, though very practical. I mean, it's not like you have to have the Harvard PhD for this. You're really talking about basic things. But tell me about Food Lies.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's been 4 years of me making it. It's a long, slow journey, but I mean, this is how long it takes. These stupid vegan films, Game Changers, took 5 years, and it had James Cameron and all his millions of dollars behind it. Actually, that's another reason why I started making this film is What the Health, the stupid vegan film that came out about 4 years ago.
Propaganda! I mean, I can't even watch it. I can't even watch it.
I turned it off the first time. I tried to watch it 4 years ago. Then I ended up just sitting down with a couple friends who eat the way I do. And we all changed our entire health from, just making simple changes to our diet. We forced ourselves to watch it. And that's the day I decided to make this film. So that was 4 years ago in the summer. I remember it was 4 years ago in the summer. And so, yeah, we're trying to answer all of those questions, all of those big propaganda lies that the vegan films put out, and just what should humans eat? I mean, that's a big question that everyone has, right? Health is so complicated because everyone has their own agenda, and everyone has, and a lot of it's money, and a lot of it's even animal rights and stuff, right? So it's not based on health.
Right.
Most health information people don't realize is coming from either money or animal rights or agendas that have to do with, money, power, whatever, controlling the food system.
All of it is not most. All of it comes from those three.
All of it.
Groups.
100%. 100%. That's where it all comes from. It trickles down. There's a whole web of how it all works, and including these worldwide organizations like the UN and WHO. They're all in cahoots. Eat Lancet. If you've heard of Eat Lancet, it's total bogus. It's like the planetary diet for human health. They want you to eat 14 grams of meat per day, which is the size of like your thumbnail.
You couldn't make it to noon. I mean, you have to have this to go. The amino acids alone just in meat.
It's absurd. And then you can see the agendas because it's so absurd. And so the film, we break it all down. It's such a hard story to tell because there's so much propaganda out there. There's so many big interests working against this message, this simple message of what we're trying to say is, let's just go back to eating how we did when we were healthy. This is not an insane idea. This is not like, we made up this random diet that's, this newfangled thing that I made up or that someone made up. No, we're talking about going back to eat like our ancestors did, or even our recent ancestors, even just back to 1900 before we had all the seed oils and then and the sugar wasn't everywhere. We were just eating real food. We were eating meat. You could look at any table in an American family or around the world. They're eating a big piece of meat, a red meat. This is their centerpiece of their dinner. They're eating the whole animal. They're eating, they're using the bones. They're eating the liver. They're
the marrow. The marrow is so valuable.
And then they had some sides. They had some vegetables or whatever they had on the sides. It was fine. It was a good meal.
Whatever was seasonal. Remember, whatever was seasonal, or they fermented. They pickled the products by using actual fermentation and made a live culture for all the good gut bacteria, which we've all missed.
I love that nuance of it because I'm really into all the fermented foods. And yes, it was local seasonal, it was fresh local seasonal. I love that. That yes, you could handle you could handle these vegetables, even though a lot of them have these anti-nutrients that I woke up to in the last few years and realized, hey, I'm not doing myself any favors chugging green smoothies and doing the kale and spinach.
Okay, so tell me about that, because now I do love me some leafy greens, and I do see there is a value in that. But tell me, I've heard you talk a little
Yes.
bit about the anti-nutrients.
Well, so anti-nutrients are little known, but you can go on vegan websites and they warn their people about anti-nutrients. Like, this is not there. I love this one vegan site that warns people you can't overeat spinach and kale and do this year round. That's part of why seasonal eating exists. Seasonal eating is so interesting. It's not just because that's what was around and that's what we had. It also gives your body a break from all the certain anti-nutrients.
Well, is it because of, like, I'm a thyroid patient? Is it the goitrogenic components of like cruciferous vegetables?
That's part of it. Absolutely. Thyroid. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Kale is not doing you any favors.
Right.
And it throughout history, you could be fine because we had kale like for a month, or we didn't even have kale. Like, actually, all of these cruciferous vegetables all came from one stringy little mustard plant that we kind of engineered over the last 100 years. There's some great graphics online. It has this one little mustard plant that had, a few little leaves that probably provided like 10 calories. And then all of the cruciferous vegetables were based on that. So we didn't even have this stuff until recently.
Wow, that's fascinating. So where can then we document, because I go to my local farmer's market as much as I can, but I do go to my organic grocery store and get some organic vegetables, but I bet I'm getting them out of season. How do we know what the seasons are?
Oh, well, yes, you could look it up and you could know, you could get an idea what's at the farmer's market, and then you could buy that. You don't have to always buy it there, but at least you know what's in season by what's there. But also, it's not like an imperative rule. It's mainly just don't do it every day all the time type of thing. That's just not natural. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also, I don't want to scare people away from vegetables because I think they're fine. It's just a lot of people just think they're magic and they like have to have them at every meal in large amounts, or they have to do, the kale and spinach shakes, which I did. I bought into this whole thing. It's like, I got to get all this stuff. And that's just an oxalate nightmare. So oxalates are why people get kidney stones. And that's why a lot of vegans get kidney stones, is because of the oxalates. So the calcium, the oxalates bind the calcium, and then it's stored in your kidney. And that's what the kidney stones are made of, right? They're calcium oxalates.
Yeah.
So, but not everyone's going to have problems with it. And it's just another problem with anti-nutrients is they bind the nutrients. So if you're trying to get iron from spinach, you're not getting the iron. There's studies that show this, that if they have anti-nutrients that block the iron absorption, the spinach has. So
wait, what?
Oh yeah. Yeah. This is all just in the literature. This is stuff that no one talks about. All the nutrition schools, you mentioned your nutrition program, they do not tell you this. All they do is tell you eat more plants. Plants are magical. Plants are like this beautiful mystery miracle machine.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's part of the mantra. Yeah, for sure.
It's so funny. It's so funny because when you actually look at the science, it holds no candle to animal foods. Like, the nutrition in animal foods is in a different category. It's complete. The proteins are complete. The amino acids are complete in animal foods. It's bioavailable. Our body can use it. And in plant foods, they are not complete. They do not have the complete amino acids, especially when we're talking about protein, and their nutrients are not bioavailable. Whatever you're seeing on the label or whatever online, you can look up the USDA information. That is not even accurate. Like for vitamin A is not, that's the precursor to retinol. Like, you get real vitamin A from retinol from animal foods. Vitamin A in plant foods and carrots is a precursor. That's not the real, that's beta carotene. And so some people are better than others at converting it, but a lot of people are not good at converting it. But even if it's still down in, I don't remember the percent. It was like 6 to 13%, something small, that you convert that beta carotene to retinol. So I could go on and on about how plant foods just don't stack up when you actually look at nutrition science and human physiology and how we absorb them. And that they're just fallback foods. Really, like for all of history, we had them just to supplement our diet. Or, I mean, they're not a problem. Yes, they do have some good stuff. Yeah, we can get some magnesium and we can get some vitamin C. And there's certain things that they have more of than animal foods. And it's great. It's fine. But people act like they're this panacea. And it's just really not true. And I wrote an article about it, actually. I wanted to make a video about it, just kind of breaking it down. Like, this is something, actually, yeah, I did write an article. It's called Eating the Rainbow, something that someone randomly made up. Because it is. Like, we did not eat the rainbow. That is something we made up since we had the Whole Foods grocery store.
That's funny.
Right? With like 100 types of vegetables and fruits, all colorful.
Things we've never heard of, right?
We just created these. We never had Whole Foods grocery stores with hundreds and hundreds of fresh plant foods year round. I went to Africa this year in February and saw how hunter-gatherers lived. They did not eat the rainbow.
Wow.
They did not eat the rainbow. They ate what they could find in their environment, and what they found was animal foods. What they found was whatever animal they could hunt, small or big, a bird, anything. And
they're the OGs of intermittent fasters, the hunter-gatherers, because they would eat and then they didn't eat for a while, and everybody was slim.
Everyone was super healthy. They still are super healthy. They're way healthier than us, which is funny because we look at them as like, oh, these poor people in Africa, they're struggling to survive. No. They're like, we're not struggling to survive. We're healthier than you, idiots.
Another thing they do is they're barefoot, and their microbiome benefits from local soil. They eat from their local soil. They drink, whatever the cow that's there on the property is where they get the milk and make their own yogurt. I mean, if people would just think about it. Oh, the water.
The water is dirty. They drink brown water.
That's what I thought.
They drink water that, like, it's so dry out there. So for one, there's no fields of vegetables or fruits at all.
That's true.
So they collect in the baobab tree. There's a lot of these like nooks, sort of like a catch, right? And so we went hunting with them. We spent 3 days with the Hadza. We went with another group, we went with the Maasai. We went to Uganda with the Botwa, the Pygmies. We did all kinds of stuff, but specifically to get their water, they had the one kid in the group climbed up the tree, and he would use a baobab shell, like take half of a pod and then scoop out this brown water, and then everyone would drink it. And we saw how brown it was because we had a water bottle and we put it in the water bottle, and it was just brown. Gosh. And more on the microbiome. So, man, there's a guy, Herman Poncer. He's a Harvard PhD. Wow, he's so cool. He is just one of these guys that buys into like the whole paradigm of we need to eat plants. Plants are magical. We need to eat whole grains, and like this is so he actually was booked on my podcast and then declined because
he did research on you.
He heard what I had to say about the Hadza and all this type of stuff. So I'm also not saying that I know more than him about the Hadza, because he's been studying the Hadza for a long time, and maybe he's been with groups that eat more plant foods. But also there's a big story with the Hadza. They're pushed off their land and they don't have all the animals anymore. They can't hunt. All the animals in Africa are in game reserves so that the government can make money off them.
Oh, wow.
And tourists can see them, which is cool. But again, just another racket from the government. Same thing with the Botwa, the Pygmies in Uganda. They're pushed off their land for the gorillas. So now the gorillas, it costs $700 to visit the gorillas. And the Pygmies are left with no skills, no way to get food, get meat anymore. They're starving. They're eating. We were there in the morning, and their breakfast, they were eating corn stalks. Not corn. They're eating corn stalks. Like the kid had a machete and was just getting the stalk and just chewing on the stalk. It was insane. So this is because governments push them off their land and they can't hunt animals. We were with a lady who was 120 years old. We didn't see her birth certificate, but there were 6 generations represented. Her youngest daughter is 90. So her and her youngest daughter were dancing. They were dancing like maniacs, jumping up and down, healthy and strong. She told us they used to live in the forest and they used to eat meat 3 times a day. Now they get meat on Christmas and Easter. That's the only time they can afford to eat meat.
Are you kidding? So what
are they? The younger generations are suffering. So the older generations are all the healthy ones because they grew up eating meat in the forest. And the younger generations are sicker and sicker as you go down. The youngest ones there were the most sick. They had the distended bellies and all the problems from
What the media
malnutrition.
shows us. Right.
And that's because they were pushed off their land. They can't get animal foods, and they're just the worst off out of them. But actually, most people in Africa that we saw were doing fine because they had enough food, and they did have access to animal foods, and they were healthier than Americans. So you could go into the cities, and they were healthier until until a certain age. They do have some of these seed oils and other things kind of moving in, and you could see that after a certain age, some of the people were getting really overweight. But anyway, I kind of went into a lot of directions there. But I wanted to talk about the microbiome. That's what
Okay, yeah.
So the Hadza, we went hunting with them the first day. Before we even went hunting with them, they showed up with an animal. They had a little deer, a tik-tik. They just brought it back, sliced it open immediately, had this dirty knife, obviously never been washed, put it out on a rock, and they just sliced it open. There was guts all over the knife, yellow, green.
Wow.
The guy found the liver, cut the liver with that knife, and gave it to me. And so I just grabbed it. So I had this raw liver covered in guts and dirt, and I ate it.
Stop it.
And it was great. It was great.
Oh my gosh.
It was delicious. I've never felt better since. Like,
are you kidding?
I think my gut microbiome got so much better since Africa. I ate all kinds of weird stuff with them, and I did not have 1 second of like feeling bad. Like, people like, oh, I had the stomach trouble.
Or GI distress, right?
Yeah, nothing. Like it's like I had better gut health.
So is E. coli then in a postmodern invention?
Well, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe they separated the actual like.
No,
feces.
you were eating.
Well, it depends on how far it goes down the digestive tract. But yeah, I guess.
That's true. That's true.
Well, with the Maasai, we did eat poop soup, actually.
Stop it.
We didn't know what we were getting into. They butchered a goat for us, and they drank the blood. So the Maasai are famous for drinking the blood and the milk of cows.
Oh my gosh.
We did it all. We got really primal. So they were drinking the goat blood, and then they butchered the animal. They cooked it for us, and we had this whole thing, and we're eating the animal just an hour after it got cooked. And then they put all the guts and the colon and the rectum, everything was in this pot, and some of the organs that they didn't want to eat, like the lungs or some of the weird organs and guts. And they made this whole soup, and they stewed it for a couple of hours, and it was brown. And we drank. They're like, oh, you have to drink it. This is like really helpful. It's like their medicine. And I think it's part of their gut microbiome. It is their medicine to have all this bacteria. I mean, really, it's kind of talking about the germ versus terrain theory, right? If you're talking about E. coli and all this type of stuff, it's like, I'm not saying that E. coli is like good for people. I mean, there's certain strains of E. coli that everyone has, and they are fine. But I'm not saying like everyone should just go and eat like a dog turd or something. I'm saying
thanks. Appreciate that.
Okay. But I'm saying that if you are healthy, then you are exposed to things all the time. I'm exposed to things. I haven't washed my hands like any differently in the past year and a half. I don't wash my hands in general. I haven't used hand sanitizer once. Like,
I hope not. I mean, because for one thing, you want to protect your microbiome.
Absolutely. And that's why I think I'm so healthy. All the people I know who do this don't get sick. And there's probably some nuance to the germ versus terrain theory that isn't all like completely perfect. But in general, I think it is correct that the terrain side of things is that it's how healthy you are, the host, as a terrain. That's what matters. So that, I use the example of the flu. All throughout my life, I used to get sick. Before I changed my diet, I used to get sick all the time. And I changed my diet, around, I guess we'll call it 6 years ago. And I've not been sick since. But anyway, when I used to get sick back in the day, it was always around finals week. I went to UCLA, and we had 3 finals per year. So it wasn't to do with the flu season. Okay. Our 3 finals were to do with when the UCLA trimester, whatever
Mhm.
quarter system
Mhm.
happened. And the only time I got sick was during that week when I was staying up all night
So
studying.
I always got in college strep throat and pink eye during finals.
And that
Mm-hmm.
just shows you how it goes. Okay,
Mhm.
the flu season is not, there's just this time when the flu's just like out to get you. What happens is that's when it's at the end of winter when your vitamin D is the lowest, your immune system's at your
Wow.
lowest, and
That's
that's why there's a flu
profound.
season, because your immune system's at its lowest. The flu is always going around. And the same thing when I was in college, since I did have a good immune system pretty much, and I was, getting vitamin D and always outside playing sports, the flu season never got me because my immune system was strong. So while it was maybe, more people were getting it in February when the flu season is, I wasn't getting it because I had enough immune health. But I wore down my immune system enough during finals week through stress, not sleeping, my,
Eating
probably
crap.
even worse diet.
Yeah.
Then that's when I got it. So that's kind of my view of like the germ versus terrain, that people, it's not just you get this germ and you get the flu. This is why people are asymptomatic with COVID. It's people they have, this immunity. They have natural health that it can go by. Like I've been to things, I went to a barbecue and everyone there got it. And they're like texting me like, oh man, we got COVID and stuff. I was like, all right, well, I feel great. Like I got
You never
tested.
got
Like
it?
I've nothing. Nothing's happened to me in the
Wow.
past year and a half. And I'm just saying that maybe I'm just an anomaly, or maybe because everyone I
No.
know is in the same situation and they're all healthy. Maybe it's because we have a healthy immune system and body and we can
Though
deal with it.
I too feel, and of course, this is not medical advice, but that it's okay to get some things because our immune system's like a muscle, and therefore that's why I don't get the flu shot. Because if I get the flu, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's always been my philosophy. Now that is obviously I'm going to get arrested if I go to Australia or New Zealand or other countries, and U.S. I'm sorry to say is moving in that direction. But our immune system is. I just try to build mine up as much as I can. I do as much as I possibly can. I am fighting some autoimmune conditions. I have the best of those that some doctors have ever seen. So just working on that. Okay, let's talk about sunshine just a minute then. We're going to talk about your diet too, but let's talk about sunshine. We are recording this in September. Arkansas weather is beautiful. Are you in LA now?
I'm in Austin.
Okay, Austin. Okay. Well then, hot. We're a little further north and east of you, but we get the sunshine and we get the warm weather. But we do kind of have a darker December, January, February in the south, right? I mean, we're not by the equator. So what are we going to do about trying? Because I've been working so hard on my vitamin D. What are we going to do in those months when it's darker and shorter days to get that vitamin D? What will you do?
Yeah. So there's still time. It's around solar noon. So you can look up solar noon and you just Google like solar noon, and it's usually around noon. So you can find that when the sun's at its peak, and you can go out in the sun for that time. And usually you want it to be, a good rule of thumb is if your shadow, the length of your shadow is the same height as you or less. Okay. So if your shadow is longer, if you're 6 feet and your shadow's over 6 feet, that means you're not really getting a lot of vitamin D, because that means the sun is at too much of an angle where you're not getting it. Right. So, but if your shadow is less than your height, that means it's very overhead. So you can still get it if it's warm enough to go outside, or even if it's not, just go out there. And you just have to do it closer to noon during the winter.
You do about 10, 20 minutes. What do you think?
I do. So my thing is I do 20 minutes on each side. Well, you build yourself up to it. So I go out to a lawn chair and I take off my shirt and I read a book, and I'm up to about 22 minutes on each side. So I'm out there for 44 minutes because I built that base tan, and you can see it. I have a great tan line. That's how you know you're getting your vitamin D, is you built up that base tan.
What is your vitamin D level, do you think, if you had the lab
I
work
haven't
done?
tested it recently. I'm guessing well, it could be up into the 70s, really. It could be probably be like
Wow.
60s. Yeah,
Oh my.
people want it above, you want it above 40, above
For sure.
47, I think. Something like the ancestral level is like 47 and above, something like that. People now are in the 20s, 30. We have our acceptable range is 30.
Yeah,
Below
and that's
20.
way too low.
20, yeah. And then some people are in the teens. I work with Dr. Gary with our Sapien Health stuff. He's got people in the single digits. And it's scary. I mean, the correlation with COVID outcomes and vitamin D is out of this world, striking.
Yeah, no question there.
No
question. Again, nobody's told us about that. Nobody said go get a vitamin D shot.
Not
except
at
the
all.
other one.
So then, yeah, vitamin D. So if you're really stuck and you're really in a northern climate and you can't get, your shadow is never going to be, shorter than yourself, then yes, look at some supplementation and take vitamin D get a good form, look online and get it with K2. Vitamin K2 is a
K2
cofactor.
Okay.
So find a D3 K2 and use it, but don't think that it's, perfect. And if you can get sun, always get the sun, right? And
no sunscreen, right?
No
this is
sunscreen.
our time to say no sunscreen.
Well, yeah. So this is what I was talking about with the base tan. So this is why you don't need sunscreen. I'm not saying go get burnt. So for one, I said you build up to it, right? You get a few minutes. You start with 3 minutes if you're really fair, and then you can go 5 minutes. So then you build up. And why you don't need sunscreen, and this is how humans always did it, is in the spring when the sun wasn't as strong, right? It's you start building that base tan. So you're out there all day. We didn't have sunscreen for all of history. We didn't have skin cancer. This is so bogus. Yeah.
Oh.
So I've had some great interviews with some doctors about why sunscreen could even be worse, because it's it's blocking just some of the UVA. Forget the UVA and UVB, but you're blocking some of the rays, but you're still getting some. So you're not getting burnt, but you're still getting some of these UVB, whatever it is.
I forget too. Mm-hmm.
You're still getting some of them, even though you have sunscreen, you're not getting burnt. So sunscreen, also, there's recent studies. There's a big article about recalls on sunscreens lately because they're cancerous, and they a ton of them were retracted.
And doctors now are really, because I was just recently seeing my physician, and I do have vitiligo with the white spots, but I cover it just so that I'm not splotchy here. And he said, well, are you wearing sunscreen during the day? And I went, no, because it will kill me. I'd rather have the dark spots and the white spots on my face just from natural living. And he went, yeah, that's been a real problem for us. He goes, we had to throw away, the doctor, all of our family sunscreens because they'd been told by the American Dermatological Nazi Society of the World or whatever, whoever their group is that they report to. And I was like, yeah, it's amazing what the real sun can do. It can help you. I mean, no one wants to admit that. They've made the sun a villain, and it's our friend.
Well, it's like 1984. I reread the book recently where everything is backwards and there's double speak or all this. It really is like that.
It really is.
And it seems crazy to start talking about it and people will call you conspiracy theorists, but it's proven. I mean, it just proves it right there. If you're saying that the sun is bad, the sun has been around since the beginning of time.
Right.
And humans didn't have problems. Every government intervention seems to be the opposite of what you should do. I kind of just make that a rule of thumb, is I do the opposite of what they say.
That's a Seinfeld episode when George, the summer of George was doing the opposite, and everything he did the exact opposite. So that's exactly what everyone needs to look at. In
Tanzania, when we got there, we went into the city.
So where did you fly into? You flew from Austin?
Arusha. So that's it's Kilimanjaro. So if you were to go hike Mount Kilimanjaro, you'd fly into Arusha as one of the main airports. So it's a city there. And the government, the leader, whatever, the president, decided to not do COVID. He just said, nah, we're not going to do it. I got there in mid-February, no COVID, no mask. No one knew what COVID was. They're just doing great. Everyone's doing fine. It was so interesting. No one believes me. I tell this to people here in the US and they're like, but I'm like, no, I went to the hospitals. They were empty because we were out there filming. There was no, we went to they do have COVID clinics for tourists so they can get on the plane because you have to do the test.
Right.
Empty.
Right.
0 people in the clinics. We went to hospitals, 0 people in the hospital. There are people in vans. There's like a 12-person van. They have 20 people in these vans jammed in there. This was all in February during supposed COVID. I don't know.
Well, think
Just
about
an observation.
Right. And think about all the tenants we're talking about. Their vitamin D levels are great. Their microbiomes are
They're
just
eating
awesome.
real food.
They're eating real food. They don't get packaged oatmeal bars from the middle of the grocery store. That is death in a package. I mean, it kills everything about you. I saw a meme today that I thought was great. I meant to screenshot it, but it said, it may have been on one of the fasting websites, but it said, eat anything that was served before 1900. Have you seen that? Isn't that great?
Yeah. It's a great rule of thumb because before 1900, their sugar was a rarity and we didn't have the seed oils and you didn't have all the packaged foods. I mean, of course there was a little bit.
I can't even imagine what there. I can't.
I don't even know if there was. I mean, I think you just made bread at home. I don't think there was.
You did.
Yeah.
Right. You did. And it wasn't until, and that's where we're thankful for the Industrial Revolution, but we've industrialized way too much of what we're putting the food to our mouth. Okay, let's talk about your diet transformation. Let's talk about pre meat eating and then how you live now.
Okay. So with my parents, we grew up on the food pyramid. So we were doing all the right things.
I did too. Right.
Yeah, we weren't eating at McDonald's. It wasn't like, like of course you guys were eating junk food. Like, no, we couldn't afford that. Like my dad, or he pretended he couldn't afford it. he was always like, yeah, right. We're not gonna go pay for food. We have perfectly good food at home, right? So we were doing
still say that here, right?
Home cooked meals, right? Food pyramid, low fat, milk, pasta. Lean
lots
chicken.
Of popcorn. I ate lots of popcorn for my snack.
For breakfast.
Yeah, oatmeal, Cheerios. Mm-hmm.
We did all the right things, all the things with the heart healthy labels on it. And guess what happened? Well, they got chronic disease and they're gone. And they were not obese either. This is the thing I hate this dad bod thing. People are like, oh, dad bod. That's so funny. They're like, oh, like girls are like, yeah, that's sexy. The dad bod. It's a new look. Like, are you kidding? That's diabetes. Like
right. That's exactly what it is.
Having a belly, that belly is a sign of insulin resistance. That's a sign that you have diabetes, that pooch there.
And one more thing, when men get man boobs, it's a sign of gluten consumption because gluten will trigger estrogen in men. And so men with man boobs in the tummy, they need to don't even go to the doctor. Just quit eating the crap.
Just change your diet. Okay, so I'll get there. So so I was eating that food pyramid type of diet. Even into my 20s, I was still doing that. I remember making, meals at home. Still, I was like saving money, Me too. I was still active, but I still was puffy. I was a size 32 waist. Now I'm a 28 waist. I didn't do anything.
Are you in 8th grade? You're thin.
I have a 28 waist and I have never felt better and I look better than I did in my 20s. I'm 38 now. My whole body composition changed. How
tall a guy are you?
I'm 5'10" and a half.
Wow. That's slim.
I'm 5'10". Yeah. But I mean, this is just what normal people think, that I'm like the skinniest guy around. I'm like, no, I'm just a normal person. This is what humans should look like. Like I was over in Africa. This is what we looked
like, right? 50 years ago, this is what we looked like. Mm-hmm.
This is what they all look like. They all look like me. You can look up a picture of me. I'm thin, but like I don't look emaciated. I carry muscle around.
No.
So
you look very normal.
Yeah. So I was eating the same low fat, like whatever diet they were telling me to eat. Made a few changes. I just stopped eating like the processed foods. I just stopped eating. It wasn't even processed foods. It wasn't like I was buying Doritos. It was just stopped eating the pasta and the bread. And all I did was I just added in sauteed mushrooms and onions. Yeah. It was like really, and I started eating just more animal foods and more fat. So I embraced animal protein and fat, and I cut out just like breads and pastas. And boom, 4 pant sizes went away. All the inflammation in my body went away. My allergies went away. Yeah. Joint pain went away. Heartburn went away. everything. I never didn't get sick anymore. This is why I'm so into this stuff and why I've been banging on about this for years on social media every day, doing all the podcasts, making the film. It's so simple. All I did was replace one thing with another thing that I liked more. I just got to eat more meat.
Yeah.
I got to eat more sauteed onions and mushrooms and avocado, and it's delicious. And
it's so good.
everything changed. Everything changed.
Looking at some of your social media and stuff, which is great. Everyone needs to follow you. You don't ever put a picture. There's not a picture of a chicken or a turkey. When you talk about meats, so do you call the chicken and the turkey poultry? Do you put that under the same umbrella, or is it as important?
That's a good question because, I don't think that chicken and turkey are particularly nutritious. They're fine. It's okay. Absolutely fine. But it's not a health food like red meat is. Red meat has
That's interesting.
all the amino acids and vitamins and minerals that pretty much you need. And chicken doesn't have as many. And I don't think chicken and pork are particularly well raised. It's a bit hard. It's really hard to actually find good stuff because most chicken and pork is raised in like giant warehouses.
Yeah.
It's like factory farm, but it's like the really bad type of factory farming.
Right.
I actually have a somewhat controversial opinion on cows and feedlots because, all cows spend most of their life on the grass, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, most of them, actually, the vast majority do go to feed yards and they're fattened up quickly and they're fed sort of not so great things. But I will push back on that's that bad. I think it's less than ideal, obviously. And actually, my whole business is about the opposite of that. I have a grass-fed and grass-finished regenerative meat company called Nose to Tail. So I should be out here saying you should only eat grass-fed, grass-finished,
right.
regenerative, buy from me. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you can eat red meat from the grocery store and it's perfectly healthy.
Just eat red meat.
Just eat red meat.
Tell me about a typical day and what you might like at lunch.
Right.
Are you going to pick up a tomahawk steak and eat it?
Okay. So it's pretty simple. I eat 2 meals a day. I eat in a smaller eating window. I don't go as small as you, the 4 hours. I eat in a 7-hour window. I eat
That's
lunch and I eat more of like a breakfast oriented lunch. I'm eating 3 eggs, beef sausage, avocado, yogurt. Like I get either like a yogurt or like even a Greek yogurt if I want more protein ratio, and some sauerkraut. So that's my lunch. I can't not eat it. Like I keep eating it. It's eggs, beef sausage, avocado, sauerkraut, yogurt.
That sounds
so
delicious.
Good. And I have this ranch seasoning I do at Nose to Tail that's so good. It's like instead of ranch, which is gross soybean oil trash, it's just yogurt and my ranch seasoning. That's it. There's no sugar. There's nothing in it. So
wait, where do I get your ranch seasoning?
At nosetotail.org.
Spell
I'm
that
telling
word.
you, I can send you some. I think it's the best thing of all time. I eat it every single day.
Okay, spell the website name.
Nosetotail.org.
Nose to tail. Okay.
Nosetotail.org. So then that's what I do. And then I have dinner. So I just, it's the 2 meals. I work out, a few times a week in the gym. I also play sports on the weekends, but it's not like I'm constantly in the gym or anything.
Right.
Anyway, I don't think you even need to do that. I'm not a fan of jogging either. I'll throw that in there. I think you want to sprint, you want to lift some weights, you want to do some high intensity stuff. I think the low and slow, getting on the treadmill, that's just not that effective, not that useful.
Right.
Walking's great. I would absolutely encourage people to walk after every meal, but
get
just
sunlight.
jogging.
Again, get
So
sunlight.
walk every day. Sprint, lift weights, do whatever type of sports, do yoga, do whatever, but just this low and slow cardio for 45 minutes is for the birds. I think it's terrible.
Yeah, but also it was in the 80s when we were, everybody was trying to get to Wall Street and they were burning the midnight oil and, cortisol levels were through the roof and our adrenals were shot. That's when everybody, remember, Jane Fonda had her aerobics, I forgot what that was even called,
like
but I did it.
Jazzercise or something.
Yeah, I did them all. I mean, I've done them all because everybody was doing them. It was this. And then we realized, you know what? There were a lot of fat people still on the treadmill. because also the signals from the body wants to protect us. That, are you going to war? I mean, what do we need to do here? And so the fat people, I still see fat people on the treadmill, and I just want to go over and go, sweetie, go outside, go
Do
get some
something else.
sunlight. Right.
I've
Do
seen
something
that.
else.
I've been in the same gyms. Like I just use my apartment complex gym because I just do simple stuff. I see the same people on the treadmill all year round, the same weight,
And they don't change.
getting bigger. Yeah, getting bigger. I just want to tell them it's what you eat. 80% is what you eat, 90% maybe. Like, and you need to just like do something more intense. Tell your muscles to get stronger. Don't tell them that I'm going to do the same slow jog every day. That doesn't help your body at all.
Yeah. And don't do the same thing every day. I mean, that's another thing. As a health coach, I tell people, just make that. I say the same thing also with intermittent fasting. We want that metabolic flexibility so that we're, fat burning, not sugar burning, and that our body. So I may have a 4-hour window. Yesterday, I probably had a 2-hour window. Today, I may have a 6-hour window. I just keep my body guessing. And also with working out. Today, I did some yoga. I have hills in my neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Little Rock is very hilly and it's tough,
Hit the
but then,
hills,
but then tomorrow I may do something else. It's just, it was again, that 80s and 90s mindset was we were going to do this every day and eat this and have these calories every day. And don't people know now that didn't work?
Yeah.
Our body does, again, if you think about our ancestors, they didn't know what, where the saber-toothed tiger was and how to prepare for it. And then there was a few days where they didn't eat at all. And they were fine.
I love that. And our bodies work like batteries. Like our bodies are like this for a reason. We carry around fat for a reason. It's because we can use it as a fuel source whenever we need it.
Right.
We didn't carry around trail mix and honey granola bars.
Isn't that silly? Do you know how many years that I would eat all day because somebody told me that I had to keep the embers of my metabolism burning? I mean,
it's a great marketing scheme. It was
brilliant. It was brilliant. But also I was hungrier then. The thing about intermittent fasting and the way I eat, I'm not hungry until it's time to eat. And then I eat and then I'm done. I mean, it's a shock. It's a shock though, because we were all told something different. I kept food in my purse all the time in the event that I might be hungry. Hey, people, I want to tell you something. Hunger is not an emergency. In fact,
it is if you're a sugar burner.
No, I will say that. That's true. When anyone makes the switch from, you want to go from sugar burning to fat burning, which is where you are every day and where I am every day. Those first couple of weeks are hard of making the switch. And also we're creatures of habit. And our body's going, wait a minute, you used to feed me at this time and this time and this time and this time. Where are the M&Ms? Where's the juice? Okay, so what do you do about dessert?
Oh, okay. So I didn't do dinner. So dinner, I just cook a steak.
You really do have a steak every day.
Oh yeah. I try to eat. I make sure I get enough red meat every day. That's before, everyone's into this. Oh, I can't eat. I only can eat it once a week. I'm making sure I get it every day. That's where the foundation of my nutrition comes from. So I'll cook a steak. There's all different ways to make it affordable too. You could get ground beef. You can do all kinds of stuff, but I am in there with steak every night. Red meat. Yeah, I'll throw in some salmon, maybe I'll do a surf and turf, but I'm eating a big steak with sauteed mushrooms and onions and, maybe some other sides. I eat some like smoked oysters, stuff like that. Maybe
great
some,
for you.
It doesn't get easier and it doesn't get old too. I just love how every day I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome. In fact, when I knew I was watching some of your social media, I have some grass-fed, food that I get from the farmers, my dealer for my meats and stuff. And so I pulled it out of the freezer last night. I'm going to do breakfast tonight with eggs and bacon and avocados and hamburger patties. And, I put all the things on it. So then what do you do for dessert? Do you do some fresh berries and whipped cream or anything?
So I do dark chocolate. I don't always, I kind of got out of the habit even. It's one of those habits that people have. And you realize once you make the changes in your diet, you don't really need it anymore. Actually, a lot of people tell me, they reach out to me and they say they stop drinking after they cut out sugars and grains. They say, I don't drink alcohol anymore. They said, hey, I just don't crave it anymore.
Oh,
And a lot of people have said that. They're like, they used to have alcohol problems and they're like, they went away.
Isn't that amazing? So maybe it's an amino acid deficiency that has somebody craving going for those other things.
I think it's part of it. Yeah, there is even a known gene where you have a deficiency, and that a lot of alcoholics have this gene. Yeah. And there's also, I think it's a gut microbiome part too, I mean, there's many things, but this is one of my ideas, is that, that craving, most alcohol is like ferments into sugar. It's like our beer. It's like, if you stop eating carbs and sugar, you just don't have those gut bacteria speaking to you saying, eat me, eat me.
Yeah. And that's what people don't understand is the communication with the microbiome, the trillions of bacteria that we have. We have good bacteria, we have bad bacteria. We know people all think bacteria is bad, but our bacteria in our guts that are saying, feed me, are sugar, carbs, anything white on your plate, typically. And then you just fed it. So there's a period where you're like high from it. Mm-hmm. You got the hit, and then you come down and you're like jonesing for more. And then, so that's another switch. When you go from sugar burner to fat burner, when you make that switch, it's also the switch of your microbiome go, wait, whoa. And then once you replace it with the other things and meats, and do you eat cheese at all then?
I do. I've been playing around with all different stuff. So I like to I think raw cheese is good. If you pasteurize it kind of gets rid of the enzymes that you need. So a lot of people who are lactose intolerant find they can eat raw dairy, or you can also get goat dairy, sheep dairy, or A2 milk. So the goat and the A2 cow have different proteins actually. So you can tolerate them.
So that's it. You're feeding the good stuff, and then it replaces it. It really, and that's kind of one thing we say as health coaches is we try to crowd out the crap, the bad media you consume, the whatever, but it's also crowd some of that out, and then your body does crave the other. I cannot believe we've been talking 56 minutes. I still have hours worth to ask you. This is fascinating. I'll send everybody. You need to go to all your social media. And when will the film come out?
Oh man,
is there a release date? I knew.
Okay. Yeah, we don't know. It's gonna be a while. It's just a long, slow journey. Next year. Yeah.
Okay. You've been saying that probably for 5 years. Next year.
Yeah.
Next year. Well, what you do, it's good work, dude. Keep doing it. Keep preaching. Here's one thing I want to end with. There's a chiropractor I'm going to tag after I do this who changed her life. She was 40 pounds overweight, maybe, facial hair, acne, because she was a vegan. And she ate all the soy and all the gluten and all the crap. Uh-oh. She was trying to get pregnant. She was, all these things. She switched completely to a carnivore diet. She's the size of this pen I'm holding. She is skinny as a 15-year-old. She's a tall, thin woman. But it just shows that it's not the panacea you people think it is by having a vegan diet. I mean, I can't say that enough. And you've said it a bunch. And I know you can't say it enough.
I've countless people have reached out to me with the same story. I've interviewed some of the more famous vegans, like Lierre wrote a book called The Vegetarian Myth. I interviewed her. I'd go listen to that podcast. Really great. She had permanent damage actually from her vegan diet turned around. I've interviewed some of the famous YouTube personalities that went off the vegan diet and reclaimed their health. I even interviewed Tim Sheep, who was supposed to be in the Game Changers, that stupid vegan film. He dropped out because he started eating meat again and realized how wrong he was, and he dropped out of the film. And they kept trying to get him back in. He's like, "No, guys, I'm not in. I'm eating. I'm
not
steak.
In your cult. I'm not in your cult."
It's like,
who changed his look when Bill Clinton went vegan? He looked terrible. He was gaunt, lost the color in his face.
And just big. Yeah, no, he's just more just rounded out. Yeah.
Right. And didn't look healthy. There's something about carnivorous foods. So great job. Keep doing it. Keep preaching, yo.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.